Joining us right now is David Harrison. I think this is the first time we've had David on the show. David does a really good job covering the football team for Channel 9, and he's got a podcast on the Locked On Network. You can follow David on X at dharrison82. So you were out in Phoenix earlier this week, David. What did you learn?
Yeah, just a little bit of insight into kind of what the Commanders are kind of thinking of what they're looking at. I think we got more roster type of stuff out of Dan Quinn. I'm sure you saw it. Obviously, John Keim was able to have kind of a one-on-one conversation with him before the league meeting started. Got a little bit of insight into the linebacker situation and some stuff on like Zach Ertz and as a potential return. And it was fun to see that he was hanging around the league meetings and chopping it up with Dan Quinn a little bit as well. And then they had the signing that happened while we were there and just kind of adding more D-line depth and doing things like that. So I think what you expect from Adam Peters, right, is to fill as many holes as possible to the extent where even if they're not all, blue chip free agents, it gives him the ability to go after the guy that he thinks best fits their roster versus having to feel like he's forced into a corner to fill a need. And I think that's just kind of what they continue to do right now.
Let's take a step back. Let's go through this offseason chronologically together because I haven't had you on the show, and so I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it. You're doing a great job covering the team. So let's start with Biadasz. Do we know why Tyler Biadasz isn't a part of the roster anymore?
I don't think definitively anybody really knows. We can kind of look at some things and say, he's never been like the greatest reach blocker and never been able to get to kind of that second level as much as some people would like. When you look at David Blau and, we don't know how much of a Ben Johnson-like offense is going to be, but obviously there's an expectation that there's going to be a good amount of Ben Johnson style of offense there. That's something that offense kind of needs is guys that can get to that second level and do really good things. And while Tyler was good at a lot of things, I don't think he was really great at any one thing. He wasn't an overly powerful lineman, but he also wasn't an overly athletic lineman who could just kind of get out there and open up lanes and attack second level defenders. He's got a great IQ. I think he was good in the locker room, things like that. But I think really, just from my looking at it, I think the Commanders just kind of felt like they could potentially get better in that position. And it's one of those situations where while you have that guy on the roster, there's kind of a cap there to where you almost feel like you can't pursue that higher level of play. And this kind of opens them up to that competition, which, right now I know not a lot of people are super thrilled about the Nick Allegretti, Julian Good-Jones competition. But, there's still, DQ mentioned in Phoenix, there's still a month left, roughly before the NFL draft. There's the NFL draft itself and other moves that they could decide to make that battle a little bit more interesting. But I also think they have a good amount of confidence in Nick if they decide to go that way as well.
Well, let's assume that they had a plan when they decided to move on from Biadasz. And when I say decided, we're still, like you said, it's still a bit of a mystery. For all we know, they perhaps offered him something, but much less, and he said no. But let's just say they had a couple of plans. I don't think Allegretti was plan A. Do you?
I mean, the reports out there were that they went after Linderbaum.
Right.
So I think clearly Linderbaum was probably plan A.
So what do you think happened? The money just got out of control and they backed out?
Yeah. I think that's something like on Locked On Commanders talks about this a lot leading up to free agency that, I think Adam Peters was willing, obviously he was willing to take swings, right? He went after Alec Pierce, got Odafe Owe in, went after Jalen Phillips reportedly, Romeo Dobbs. So he was definitely willing to go out there and spend a lot of money. And they did spend a lot of money really relative to what they've done in the past. But I think that everybody's at their limits. And obviously AP just, what we learned from him in his contract situations is he's going to draw a line in the sand. And if that line gets crossed, then he's willing to make the right decision. You know what I mean? And I don't know where that line was for him. I think I know that Tyler Linderbaum made more money than anybody expected him to. We knew he was going to set the market. How much he was going to set the market was the question. I thought the deal could get up to like $25 million per year, and even that was a very large increase over the market cap from previous contracts, and he even eclipsed that. I actually did the research, and we haven't seen a position group ceiling rise as much as it did with Tyler Linderbaum's contract since Patrick Mahomes. And Tyler Linderbaum actually doubled the amount
in terms
that
of
Patrick
what
Mahomes
percentage
contract.
increase from what was expected.
The percentage jump.
Yeah.
From the top cap to the new top cap. Yeah. Because I think
what
Mahomes
was it?
Like
it was
22%.
probably like a 30% difference, right?
It was 50. It was 50%.
It was 50?
Yeah,
wait, he got 29. What was the aggregate of guarantees?
It was 18. It was who was it? I can't remember who it was anymore. Right, but it was whatever. 18 million before that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's it seemed like it in the moment. I didn't realize it was that much. So, what do you think if Nick Allegretti is part of the solution? Let's just say there are a couple of solutions, and that's number one. I saw that you talked to, it looks like Quinn, about Brandon Coleman potentially playing center. Do you think that that's a legitimate, thing? Like that could be a part of their plan?
I don't know that it's part of the plan as much as it is just leaving the door open. And that's kind of what I wrote in the story that I wrote after that conversation with DQ, is they're leaving that possibility open. Dan shared with everybody that they did do some stuff with Brandon at center towards the tail end of last season. And what kind of really sparked my interest there is towards the tail end of last season is also when they were starting to do some side things with Jaden under center and kind of starting to get him comfortable there too. So it's definitely not a throwaway thing. It's definitely something that's like, hey, let's look at this for potentially the future. And DQ was really complimentary of Brandon about the way that he could snap the ball, get off the line of scrimmage, get out there and move. So I think that athleticism that we knew he had coming out of TCU really stands out. So I think it's intriguing. But DQ did say, the plan is for Brandon to start the offseason program at left guard, like him and Chris Paul. That's going to be the competition there. Nick and Julian will be the competition at center. But that at the end of the day, it's about getting the best five guys out there on the line of scrimmage. So as they go through OTAs, as they go through training camp, if it becomes apparent to them that they need to give that a try, that's something that DQ is willing to give a try if that situation arises, give Brandon Coleman that opportunity. So I don't know. I wouldn't say it's an expectation from my angle that Brandon is going to get center snaps once we get to OTAs and all that, but it is definitely something if we get to camp and we kind of see maybe the line doesn't look fluid, maybe it doesn't look kind of cohesive, they might start to get to a place where they do give Brandon that opportunity.
My gut tells me that there's a really good chance Brandon Coleman ends up being the starting left guard. They were willing to let Chris Paul, move on. He obviously didn't get what he and his agent thought they would get. And I don't know, maybe they're looking for the more athletic, interior offensive lineman based on what we might see in terms of an increase of sort of zone runs, inside zone, outside zone, run scheme, a run scheme. Do you think that to me, there's a better chance Brandon Coleman's the starting left guard than is the starting center, a much better chance. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that sentiment. But I think that if Brandon gets into that center competition, if he does get the opportunity to do that, I think he can definitely do some good things. Really, the big question I have about Brandon Coleman, if he does get in that center conversation from a functional standpoint, not just conversational standpoint, is the mental side of it, the football IQ side of it, and understanding everything that needs to be set. Because like Nick Allegretti, when he re-signed, kind of talked about one of the things he loves about the center position is it's his huddle before it's Jaden Daniels' huddle. You know what I mean? And then you get to the line of scrimmage, and he's just as important in setting the protections and everything like that. And he loves kind of doling out those assignments and everything else. So Brandon, not that his football IQ is not in question necessarily, but Nick has been doing this for a lot longer. Obviously, he's got that veteran edge there, and he's got that the live bullets of doing it in practice and in games. So I think that's where he's got the clear advantage over Brandon Coleman. But we've also seen, in both years, right, that DQ has been here. This coaching staff is not afraid to make changes on the offensive line in season if they feel like the time has come to make those changes.
We're talking to David Harrison, who covers the team for Channel 9 and Locked On, the Locked On Network. So, kind of continuing through the offseason chronologically, we get to free agency, and we've talked a little bit about it already. The Linderbaum thing was really interesting in terms of the percentage increase from the expected. But what do you think was the thing they were disappointed with the most, and what do you think they're most excited about?
I think I would have to think the receiver situation is probably the most disappointing. Obviously you go hard after Alec Pierce, but it was no secret that Alec, his preference was to come back to Indianapolis, go back to Indianapolis. The quarterback situation played a big role in his decision. So I think, AP went into that, assuming that those reports are accurate, knowing that there was a chance there, pivoting to Romeo Dobbs, taking another swing at it and missing out on him, I think obviously is going to be disappointing. And, I think everybody loves Diami. He was always loved in the building. So I don't think anybody's sad to bring Diami back into the fold. But I think when you go after two guys like that and you come up empty, there's just got to be a natural kind of letdown type of feeling. You have to, for AP in the front office, you got to quickly get over it and move on, or else you're going to lose out on other guys too. And I think for me, if I have to pick where they're probably most excited, I think you have to go front seven, right? Because it's also where they went the most heavy. They went the hardest, right? With Chenal, Amenahue, Chason, Settle, Davidson now, Adafe Owe coming in. I mean, they went really hard at that front seven, and then even bringing back Dietrich Wise Jr. Like I've been talking about this on the show too, because I know we're talking about the drafts coming up, and David Bailey's there, Ruben Bain. I'm looking at this roster, and I'm like, I already see 10 or 11 D linemen that you would probably project on the initial 53-man roster. So if they draft another guy, especially in the first round, he's making it. So who's the odd man out? And obviously the Daron Payne. Well, you could just trade Daron comes up, and until there's real fire there, I don't know that it's necessarily worth getting diving too much into. But it's going to be interesting to see who they say or see what they do. But I think the front seven, just because of the sheer volume that they've done there, they probably have the most excitement there.
Well, that's interesting that you're contemplating the idea that if David Bailey was sitting there at 7, and Ruben Bain probably will be sitting there at 7, that they wouldn't take either player. They would, for me, Bailey, if they didn't take him at 7, I'd be very upset, because they have now, with Armstrong coming back, with the addition of Owe, with the addition of Chason and Amenahue, and even John Baptiste coming back, who played early in the year before he also got hurt. Right. Wise coming back. You're like, well, where is he going to fit? Well, he's going to fit because they don't have right now, unless it's Owe, a true scare and offense pass rusher, right?
Right. Yep. No, 100%. Because even Dorrance Armstrong, like I know they love him, and I think we can all agree he's on a Pro Bowl pace when he got injured, unfortunately mid-season there, but he's coming off that knee. And every player I've ever talked to coming off of an ACL, really regardless of position, has always told me that first year, they still didn't feel 100% themselves. That second year is really when they started to kind of get their mojo back. And so this is going to be Dorrance's first year. It's also a contract year, so that's a big thing. So, I don't think, like I said, I don't think it takes off I don't think anybody's off the board. Like, I don't want to get to that level of it. But it does make you kind of wonder, like, where do they really see all these players? They also brought back Drake Jackson, which AP has a lot of faith and hope for his future. So it's a very crowded room. But I think, DQ preaches competition. AP loves competition. And I think all these guys are professionals and understand that nothing is given in this league and everything is earned. So if they bring in David Bailey or Ruben Bain or whoever it is, then, you got, if you're really better than that guy, you just got to go show it.
Real quickly, the player they added yesterday, Davidson, where does he fit in?
Yeah, I got a little bit of background on him from someone who's kind of like familiar with why they brought him in. And what was really interesting with that conversation is the mentioning of the expectation, which obviously, we haven't seen it on the field, but of a good 3-man big interior. And I guess kind of the way that I almost envision it is like maybe Davidson at the nose and then Settle and Payne kind of bracketing him, Kinlaw and Wise as your big edge, your big ends type of guy. So a 5-man front. And I know the 5-man front is something that the Vikings used more of last year than they had in previous years. To kind of, for one, they didn't have some of the dynamic edge rushers that they had in the past anyway. But I think that's something, and so this kind of indicates to me that it's something that Durante Jones is planning on bringing over from Minnesota, at least in some way, shape, or form. And again, that kind of goes.
And you're
back
saying
to
that would be their big
had.
lineup,
right? That would be their. Yeah, it's not like their base by any means.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like when
and
they
a
want to go
five-man
big.
front in many ways, especially if you've got a nose tackle and somebody playing zero technique or close to it. I mean, it really, if those two two edges are in a 2-point stance, it's a 3-4 just as much as it's a five-man front.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and that's what, it's just about attacking the gaps, right? At the end of the day is really what it's about. But when you want to get bigger, if the Eagles are coming out and trying to cram Saquon down your throat, counter them with a big guy and some athletic linebackers that can get to the edges and see if that works.
Interesting. Because I think my first reaction when they signed Settle was, if they are in a base 3-4, he's the nose tackle, because I don't think it's Kinlaw or Payne. And who else would they have on the roster? The guy that played, I think, knows more than anybody last year when they were in their five-man front was Eddie Goldman, actually, of the players they had, and he's not back. So that's interesting about the guy that they just signed, and just the idea of a super big lineup. So, David, where are you on what you think they're thinking as it relates to Brandon Ayuk?
I think that if Brandon Ayuk becomes available, then I feel like he's going to be here. If Brandon Ayuk becomes available, he'll be here. But I don't think Adam Peters is banking on him becoming available. It's one of those, we'll believe it when we see it type of things. I actually asked him about that at the combine. Had to kind of ask it in a weird way so that I didn't get him in trouble for talking about a player under contract. But I think I'm pretty confident he knew where I was going with it. And he basically said the same thing that Jason Light used to tell me when I was covering the Buccaneers, is that you have to operate based off what you know, not what you hope. And right now, what you know is that the 49ers are clearly not in a rush to make Brandon Ayuk available to Washington or anybody else. And so you got to move forward with that knowledge. Yeah,
but he's also not going to play for the 49ers in 2026.
I don't
that
so.
Too. It's going to be interesting, because I would think that, they would have a lot of information on just his mental stability. What about Jawan Jennings? He's still out there. He didn't get the money that he and his agent thought he would get. He's obviously, a guy that would fit the David Blau offense as a number 2 or even a number 3 receiver. Do you think there was any interest in him, but it was just too expensive?
Jawan is interesting because there's actually, so when you look at like the Ben Johnson offense, and you would look at Jawan Jennings as almost like maybe the Keenan Allen, right? And a lot of people, they look at Mike Evans as replacing Jawan Jennings. And the Ben Johnson offense, while there's a role, obviously, like you said, there's a role for that type of receiver. There's not really a feature role for that type of receiver. And like you said, I think Jawan was kind of hoping for that type of a situation. And I don't know what his side of the conversation is. And this goes for a lot of players. Like ego, we all have egos, and egos can be our best friend and they can be our biggest enemy. And I don't know how he's feeling about how the market has unfolded for him. And he might be looking to wait until after the draft to see if one of these teams who wanted maybe Jordan Tyson or one of these other big receivers don't get their guy, and then they come calling and things like that, and just kind of waiting to see how it transpires. To me, it looks like the Commanders' offense is really trying to get a lot faster. And while Jawan can certainly operate down the field, I don't know that he fits that mold per se. And when you look at Alec Pierce, and you look at Romeo Doubs, I think they were going for a little bit more dynamic ability. So I don't know that I think AP was for sure in on Jawan. Wouldn't be surprised, because I think we all kind of expected them to be in on Jawan Jennings. But we'll also see, every day that goes by, like those contracts, can get cheaper. But then when the draft goes by, if you don't get a guy that you wanted, that contract could also get more expensive.
Yeah, real quickly, because you mentioned this early, and I don't know what the outcome of the conversation about Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz was with John. So is there any chance that either one is back?
Yeah, I think the belief right now is that the door is basically open for both of them to potentially come back. Obviously, they've got to make their own decisions. We know the reports that Zach wants to come back and play again, and all those things, and where he fits in that tight end room with adding Chig Okonkwo and having those other guys too. I think Bobby, the thing with Bobby that I've kind of wondered aloud is, would he be willing to take on a KJ Wright role? KJ Wright in Seattle was a big mentor to him, but obviously not an every down player, not a feature player in the defense. And I wonder if Bobby would be willing to take on that role on this defense while, Leo Chanel Jordan McGee, and who knows if they draft a linebacker or something like Sonny Styles, if he somehow miraculously makes it to number 7, would he be willing to take on that role? I can't tell you. I could see Bobby going either way just from the media, the player relationship that we have. So I can't tell you one way or another where I think he would go with that. But I think that's probably part of it is, what does the role look like? And is Bobby willing to accept that role in a return?
Where do you think Deebo Samuel lands and when?
Ooh, I don't know. I'm surprised that he doesn't.
I mean, it's not going to be back here. Not after
no.
bringing Diami, Van Jefferson, and the possibility of another player, for sure. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't see him back in Washington for sure. I don't know that. I don't know off the top of my head like a pure location for him. I think he would be a really interesting fit in Denver with Jalen Waddle and Sutton. And I know they've got a lot of faith in Franklin, but he's kind of a long, almost like a Jawan Jennings style of receiver. And so they certainly have some room for a potential Deebo style of guy if Davis Webb wants them to do some work with him. But yeah, that would be intriguing. I know the 49ers were a team a lot of people were looking at, but I'm definitely surprised Deebo is still out there. So I'm interested to see where he ends up as well.
I actually am somewhat interested in the possibility that Courtland Sutton gets moved after they signed Waddle.
Really?
And whether or not there'd be interest here in a guy like Sutton. So let's finish with this because it's 3 weeks from tomorrow night. They'll be on the clock at 7. Let's just assume they don't move up. They don't move back. What do you think the best case for them is and that what they're hoping to see be available at 7?
So I think the best case scenario is Sonny Styles at 7. I think Sonny Styles at 7 makes the most sense, gives you the most juice right now, but also for the future. It gives you a future quarterback of your defense, even if it's not year 1. Eventually, he's the quarterback of your defense, and hopefully you get the next Bobby Wagner, from a legacy standpoint. But I don't really have high hopes that he's going to make it. If he gets to the Giants, I feel like they're going to run to the podium, as it is with that ticket. So I think it's 7. Outside of that, honestly, I've started to lean more towards Carnell Tate. I don't have like a final answer yet. Like I said, we're 3 weeks out. But Carnell Tate is someone I just look down the future. And I know DQ and AP were asked similar questions, and they kind of don't really worry too much about that from what they said to us. But right now, like when you look at, the new stadium opening up, there's no receiver that you can look at and say, this guy needs to be the one catching the ball for Jaden. And I think they need to get that figured out, get that tandem of who's going to be the receiver that really kind of runs with Jaden through the majority of his career. And Carnell Tate, while I don't think coming into the league should be a number 1, he doesn't have to be for Washington, at least in 2026, and could potentially, learn behind Terry and do all those things. And by the time he needs to step into those number 1 shoes, he's got a couple of years under his belt as an NFL receiver. And so I think that's the best mix of short-term and long-term solution if they can get that.
All right, last one. Where are you on Jeremiah Love? Like, if I told you they picked offense, Tate or Love, would you prefer Tate over Love or Love over Tate?
Yeah, I would go Tate. I would go Tate over Love, and it's not because I don't think Jordan Love is going to be a great running back. And I'll freely admit too, I was actually having this talk with Mitch Tischler in Phoenix. Like, this might be an oversimplification on my part of this whole thing, but if you can open up the lanes to give Jeremiah Love the room he needs to be effective, you can open up those same lanes for Bill and for Rachaad White. And so I just feel like while he's a better running back in a vacuum than who they have on the roster right now, I think the overall impact on the roster, both current and future, isn't as profound as Carnell Tate could be. So that's why I leave Carnell Tate.
So I'm just noticing you were an Arizona State alum. Are you a big Jaden guy?
I was a big Jaden guy. Yeah, I mean, I am a big Jaden guy. So when it's funny because when Jaden got to the team, like, I had a little side conversation with him where I just mentioned it was like, hey, just, you're going to find out or whatever. It's going to come up at some point in time, but I am an Arizona State grad. And, I don't know what went through his head when I said that, but I just reminded him, like, hey, dude, like, not everybody did you dirty, when you transferred to LSU. And some of us wanted to see you succeed, whether you were in that uniform or a different one.
It was tough for him there
Yeah, it was really tough.
Not a bad place to go to school. Tempe's pretty nice most of the year. Thanks, David. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Thank you.
David Harrison, everybody from Channel 9 and the Locked On Network.